Hello, my name is Donald Crunk, and I want to show you this cool little synthesizer. This is a Erthenvar Lunchbox with a selection of make noise modules and Erthenvar tile modules in it. As you can see, I'm controlling the whole shebang with the iPad, and it's currently running OSC, and it's a little keyboard preset from that. This system was really my response sort of to the Buchla Music Easel, which was released this knob, and it's really exciting that came out. I love the idea of it. I love having sort of a solo voice sort of instrument that you can go to that's very portable. You know, it kind of makes you work in a little bit different way than a normal system would. You know, you're very limited with what you have. And I'm typically used to working with lots of loops and lots of really dense sounds, having lots of layers. And with an instrument like this, you don't have that because it's such a small instrument. You know, at most you can get two separate voices from it. So it presents a little bit of a challenge, especially for a musician like me. So it's been a lot of fun to work with. There are some differences to the Music Easel, of course. You know, they sound completely different for one thing, but I think the philosophies are really similar and the ideas behind them. And additionally, I mean, this thing cost me half of what a Music Easel costs. That includes the iPad. So it's definitely a little bit easier on your wallet. Anyway, so let's get into some of the information about this. I'd just like to take you on a little guided tour. And if you'd like to hear some sounds, I have some sounds available on my SoundCloud, a 40-minute set that I recorded on vacation with this thing. And it's really minimal stuff, but I think it's interesting to listen to. And additionally, I'll have another video of just sounds. But this is just going to be a talking tour video, so if you're interested in this sort of thing, sit back and relax, and I'll show you around this thing. Bye. Alright, first I'd like to take a closer look at this case, because it's a really cool case. So, one I guess con about this case is that the lid, you'll notice, is non-detachable currently. That's just the way that the case comes from Harbor Freight. Take a look at the clasps here on the back, and you know, you might be able to punch those out with a punch or something like that and make the case detachable. They've riveted, looks like, yeah, rivets, these hinges here, so they're not going to be easy to get off. But I am going to attempt it, maybe to put some clasps similar to what's on the front on the back, because it's important, especially for a performance case, that the audience sees what you're doing, sees the patch cords and sees the light and all that stuff. It's an important visual factor, I think, for modular synthesis in general. So you'll notice it's also not quite deep enough really to fold when the case is patched. That's fine. This is such a small system that if you can't, you know, remember a patch, or at least write down a patch, you know, I don't know. You need to try harder. Try harder at modulars. Okay, so other things about this case, you'll notice that the outputs are nicely positioned on the side here. Very fucking sensible. There's a MIDI input. More on that later. There's a MIDI to CV converter in this box, actually. Left and right 1/4-inch outputs here, so you can easily run stereo, and a stereo 1/4-inch output for headphones. So that's simultaneous. Really nice. Lots of gain. There's an attenuator on the output as a tile module, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's really a rugged case. You know, the whole package together is pretty light. I'd say maybe around 8 pounds. Maybe even less. And so it's well protected. Another thing is the power supply inside here is especially made by Erthenvar and Pulp Logic to supply power not only to the modules you mount in the case, but there's special range of tiles also, which is really interesting. They've really gone the extra mile to make this case as usable as it can be. This is my cat Grumpers, and nope, get off the modules, buddy. All right. So let's sort of go through some of the modules I chose here, starting in the left with the DPO. DPO is great. I bought that a few months back, and I've already done some videos with it. It's a fantastic oscillator. I bought it because really I had fallen in love with the sound of the Buchla 258. I've had a chance to play those a couple of times, and I really enjoy the emphasis on FM. And it seemed like whatever frequency I set the knobs at, the oscillators, it sounded good when they were FMing together. Like I couldn't get atonal sounds out of the thing for a while. It was fantastic, great experience. So I bought the DPO, and the DPO is not a 258. It's more of a tribute to the Buchla 259, which is a completely different oscillator. And Tony's added even more Vactuals, and so the DPO in practice is a really rubbery sounding oscillator. It's got a lot of bending and crazy relationships happening within the FM bus and things like that you can exploit. So it's really different from the 259, the 258, and the Music Easel oscillator, which sits somewhere in between the 258 and 259. You have the timbre circuit from the Easel oscillator, sorta. You have your wavefolding section on the DPO. You have some extra functions with all of the FM normalization down here and the follow circuit, things like that. So it's quite a full-featured oscillator, and I don't really think it lacks anything functionality-wise. It certainly sounds different from the Music Easel oscillator, but it's got the same philosophy. So whatever. To the right, Optimix, which is dual low pass gate and mixer module. So the Music Easel also has a dual low pass gate in there as well. Pretty similar. Next to that, we have just a passive mult from IntelliGel. I use that just because I don't use stackables. I use regular patch cords, and I still use mults. So I'm still I'm pretty old school. Next to that, we've got a pair of functions. So I chose two functions versus the maths, which everyone would normally suggest, just because the maths wouldn't fit in the case in the configuration that I have. So I chose the two functions, and I'm glad I did. They offer everything that I wanted out of the maths, and allowed me to take the utility section of the maths, the center section, channels 2 and 3, and break those out down here into the utility section. So I've got some added functionality as well. The maths, doesn't provide 2 gate outputs per channel. It only provides 1. As well, the function adds this nice hang input, so you can send it gates and it clocks, and it'll pause during the cycle when the hang goes high. So you can do some cool stuff with an end of rise output from one function into the hang input of another, pausing it whenever it hits that end of rise, and getting some really interesting syncopated relationships between the two. A lot of cool things you can do just patching the two functions together. Just a lot of cool things. So there's a little advantage over the Buchla Music Easel here, because the two functions are a little bit, I think, a lot more flexible than the AR generation on the Music Easel. So that's great. Now moving down to the left here, we have another passive mult, an attenuator just for direct current voltage, 2 FSRs, and these FSRs are fantastic. They they're small, they're really simple, just CV and gate output, But the pad response is great. You can do some cool, vibrato stuff with it, and I'm really happy with them. I bought those to sort of replace the functionality of the preset voltage pads on the Music Easel. It has 4, I have 2 FSRs. It was a good trade-off. Next to that is the sum module. This is pretty simple, just a unity mixer. Can handle both direct current and alternating current voltages. Next to that we have an attenuverter, which just an attenuator that can also invert the signal. An OR mixing module, which allows me to mix together gates without totally spiking the output level when they hit at the same time. So I can do some more interesting rhythmic stuff with that. To the right of that, we have the implant module, which goes along with the MIDI input on the right side here. So this allows actually duophonic MIDI to CV conversion, which is fantastic, and it's really inexpensive for what it does, and it certainly doesn't take up much room, as you can see. On the left we have CV1 gate 1, CV2 gate 2. So this, I have it currently set up to be assigned to MIDI channel 1 and MIDI channel 2 respectively. What's great about this is you can actually dump a sysx file into the MIDI input and reconfigure these 4 outputs to be whatever you want. So if you want continuous controller messages out of these 4 outputs, say for an XY pad or something like that, you can do that easily. And you can even keep like a MIDI utility on your iPhone or something. Dump a sysx file when you're out on the go and reconfigure that MIDI to CV converter, when you're away from a computer, which is, it's cool. I don't know if I'd do it during a live setting, but you can still change it up pretty quickly. To the right of the implant module, we have the output module, which is also connected to the output ports on the right side. We have a left and a right input on 3.5 millimeter, and an attenuator for the output. So it is very nice to have an attenuator on the output, dedicated attenuator. You gotta have that. Modular levels are really hot. Something to note about the pots on these tile modules is they start at 1 o'clock, turn clockwise, and about 11 o'clock is maximum. So they're opposite, what you would normally find up here in regular Eurorack land. But that's pretty easy to get used to. No complaints there. So that kind of takes care of the modules in the relationship to the Music Easel. One notable difference between the Music Easel and this case is the lack of any kind of random voltage source. That's really huge. I really miss having that in the case. I use the noise ring for that in the larger case, as well as some other modules. And not having that sort of fluctuating voltage source is killing me. I miss it. I can sort of do some stuff with the MIDI CV converter, where I can get a quantized random voltage out of there, but it's not the same, and it doesn't react, with the patch. It's just I want one of those in here. So I'm jealous of Music Easel owners just because they have that in there. So lastly, we're going to talk about the iPad and how the iPad factors into controlling all of this. This again, like I said at the beginning, this is one of my favorite setups. Just a simple keyboard. I came up playing standard black and white keys, so I'm still used to going back to this sort of layout. And it's not touch sensitive like the Buchla Music Easel keyboard is. I'm not going to get pressure out of this as is. But I think with some creative programming in OSC, or that other app that people use for this, whatever it's called, you can get a similar functionality, I believe, with enough programming. Anyway, I also use an XY pad from OSC. If I reconfigure the implant to send CC messages, I can use the XY pad do some cool swoops and stuff like that. Some great sound effects. So let's look at some other apps that we have available that I use with the Lunchbox. Little MIDI is one. This pretty common app. It's great because it's a perfect companion to the Lunchbox. 16 steps. You know, you can set them up for 4 different stages to switch through, and it's duophonic. I can set each sequence to be on separate MIDI channels, so I can use both the oscillators of the DPO separately, running separate sequences, and really make the most of a small system. So that's a cool app for that. Along those same lines, where to go? I have Phaedra, which is a little bit newer to me. It's a lot of fun. You know, you can run up to, I believe, 4 separate MIDI channels with this one. But you go along and you turn steps on individually, and then you can bring up the notes section and edit the notes that are playing for each of the steps you turned on. It's a little bit of a more awkward way to work, I think, in a lot of ways. So I'm not completely sold on this app yet, but I have used it. Moving away from that, we also have Amos, which is sort of what I'm using to replace my quantized random voltage source now. I've got scrolling notes on the top and bottom, and these little balls contain note values, and when the balls smash into a note, they trigger a MIDI message. So that's kind of cool. I can do some interesting generative stuff that way, and just generally have a lot of fun with the synthesizer. Everybody loves just bouncing balls around an iPad. Look at that shit. Look at that shit go. So I believe that covers most everything I wanted to say about the synth. It's really cool. Whether this kind of instrument is right for you or not depends a lot on where you are musically. I think this sort of case and layout might be right for a lot of people, but maybe the selection modules, you know, might not be. So it really depends on the kind of sounds you want, the kind of sounds you're used to working with, and the kind of directions you want to go in the future. But I think it's a great value. I think it's a great alternative to the Buchla Music Easel. You know, I can't diss that thing at all. I really want one, but this is, if I can't have one, which I can't, it's expensive as shit, this is the next best alternative that I could come up with. So thanks to Make Noise, you know, for making these awesome modules. Thanks to Erthenvar for putting the case together for me. It looks fantastic. It works fantastic. I'm happy with it. And I hope you have enjoyed listening to me talk for this long.